really happy to be here today. I have to say, when we first started talking about this a couple months ago, I didn't correlate today as being the last day of the quarter. So I don't know if anyone else on the call is in Q1 ending freak out mode, but that's kind of where I find myself today. But no better place to be than talking with others that are kind of, in the same boat and going through similar things in the industry. I think it's going on webinars and meeting with people at conferences and things like that is the number one way that I stay sane in this industry, because when we talk to our friends and families about what we do, I think a lot of them just have no idea, right? So when you try to explain it, it's often lost on them. So without further ado, I'm going to start sharing some of my slides. And I know, Baachu, we didn't talk about when we're going to do the polls, but if people could put in the chat what your primary industry is in, it's just to get the conversation kind of going. I think Adrian mentioned he's not getting audio for some reason, but hopefully everyone else can hear me. So let's see. Let me know if you guys can see my. Oh, I just muted myself. Hold on. Let's see. Slideshow. Okay. Can you guys see my slides? Can I get a thumbs up?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So my name is Tara Kowalke, and yes, so as mentioned, I've been doing proposals for a little over 12 years, and I've been with Blackline, which is a publicly traded software company. We do finance and accounting automation, and they went public in 2016. I've been there since May of 2019, so coming up on 3 years. And we have just grown our team recently to 8 in the last 6 weeks or so. So before that, we were 5, and then we were 3, and back and forth with numbers. But now we're 8 strong across the world, and it's an exciting time for my company. And we do a very large volume of proposals. I don't know if other teams get involved in things outside of strict RFPs and RFIs, but we also do a huge volume of ITQs, so information technology questionnaires, vendor surveys, and making sure that our clients know how secure we are. And so I hopefully we'll get to talking about that a bit, and I wanted to see where everyone else is on that as well. So nice to meet you. I had planned a few more slides than you're going to see today, so hopefully we can fill some time with talking and sharing stories later on. But there was like a bunch of stuff I wanted to add to this slide. But if I don't know you already, it's like when we have this kind of job in common, right? Like we may not know each other, but we know each other, right? We kind of know how the same frustrations and same pain points, but also I definitely want to get into some chats around things that we can do to help each other, and what kinds of hacks and tips and tricks we can all share. So for us, there's a couple different scenarios that I want to go through, right? So for anything that's not in the federal space, I feel like is the timelines have been more rushed and closer than they ever have been. So when we say at our company that our SLA is 10 business days, I would say better than half of the requests that come in are actually an ask of less than 10 business days. And so we kind of say, in a perfect world, if we have 10 days, here's all the things that we could do and how we would go forth with it, right? So in that means the bid is very straightforward. We're well positioned. We get our RFPs from sales reps directly, and so like the sales rep knows what's going on. They already have people in place, and we're ready to go. And we have those 10 full days, right? So that to me is what a perfect world is. And next down on the list, a few missing pieces, right? They're not entirely sure what the ask is. Maybe the relationship isn't a very long relationship. Maybe they found us on the internet and they're just sending us the proposal because it's their procurement department's deal to have to get at least 3 bids. So those ones feel a little bit different, right? You can kind of feel those ones out and say, like, I think this is written for someone else. Are you sure they're really interested in our solution? So that's where a bid no bid process would come in place. a lot. And then, maybe they're not sure who to ask to the kickoff call. So, it doesn't mean we can't do it, but, there's just more pieces to fill in. And then what I'm calling a warm mess, that's, we have 5 days or less. They're kind of all over the place with the solution. For my company specifically, when I first started, it was very clear. We had a product set that they mixed and matched a little bit, but by and large, everything was the same as far as what types of solutions would best fit for our company. But since then, we've acquired 2 new companies. They have different sets. Sometimes they play together, sometimes they don't. Sometimes we're dealing with partners, sometimes we're not. And so just getting to figuring out who's supposed to be at the table on these warm messes, as I'm calling them, is sometimes a little bit difficult. Not to mention, if communication is off, then it throws things into a tailspin. Especially, we work at a global company, and it's hard sometimes when you log on early and you have a whole bunch of asks or confusing emails from other parts of the world, and you're not able to necessarily reach out to them right then because they might not be online. So just trying to figure out the best way to get everyone on the same page when it's a rush timeline is difficult sometimes. And then the hot mess. So this is, it's Friday morning. It's got to be due right now because it's due in Australia on Monday. So, to try and save you or your team from working over the weekend, you reach out to all your SMEs, you call in all your favors, you do everything you can to help out. And then, my favorite is a scenario where someone lobs something over the fence, there's barely any information, and then you reply asking them for more information and ask questions, and then you get their out of office. So that to me is, a nightmare scenario, but it happens, right? And so being able to keep your cool, try and figure out who else can help. And again, I'll talk about the bid no bid process a couple times through my presentation, but it's interesting because we are still developing ours right now, and so I think that a lot of the warm messes, hot messes would probably go to the wayside a bit more if something like that was in place. So just telling ourselves that we don't have that yet. So I'm saying that, it must-haves, right? Like, what are the things that you absolutely should or must have in place in order to get to the finish line in 10 days or less, right? So, I recognize that not all companies are built like ours, and the way that our opportunities come in is through Salesforce, or is through our CRM, the Salesforce, but our real Salesforce, right? Our sales team. And so we ask them to open an opportunity with us in Salesforce, and that's how we kind of get some of the back end information. But we also, require our sales team to have the right people in place. Like for us, that looks like a solution consultant. They need to have the backing of their RVP in our instance. And we want them to engage us early. There's times, and this I would throw into the warm mess category, right? Is you can see on the email thread clearly that they had it for a couple of days or a week, which when you have 10 days or less, that's not a great situation to put us in, right? So usually I give reps a pass, if they do it one time, if they're new, they didn't know the process somehow, fair enough. But when you have repeat offenders, it gets really difficult to muster the strength to want to put your best foot forward when you have these people who are routinely kind of like going outside the rules. So it's nice to have that relationship built with senior leadership to go back and say, like, hey, this is why we can't do it, because it's not just our team that we're relying on, right? We're calling in all the help from SMEs. We're using our proposal tool, but maybe the tool only has part of the answers or some of the answers. So when they're asking 10 days or less of us, they have to know that it's not just us that they're dealing with, right? That it's an untold amount of people. As I like to say, we're all professional cat herders, right? Like, we might not know all the technical answers and all the details about how every product works, but we have to know who to go to for these things, right? So I think having the backstory from a rep's mouth, it's great to have a form and fill that out, fine. certainly need that, but we also need to know the pain points, like things that are not written in the RFP. Tell us what you learned in the demo. Tell us how long you've been engaged with them. Has it been 4 years and they went with a competitor last time and now they're back because they weren't happy with their services? Like, give us whatever you need to help us win the bid, right? And something I don't have written down here, one thing that kind of drives me nuts is sometimes a rep will sit on it for 2 days and say, well, I wanted to make sure I knew exactly what it was, and then send it over, blah, blah, blah. But then they'll send over, this happened recently, they'll send over 2, 4, 6, and 8. And you're like, well, where are the other ones? Oh, well, the other ones I didn't think you guys needed. One was pricing, one was this. It's like, no, please send us everything, because we need to have the full picture of what we're dealing with. We need to understand exactly what the ask is. Even if there's things like, it's like, for instance, at my company, we don't get involved on our side in pricing. I know other proposal teams do, and we have like whole courses and people in APMP that in others organizations that know all about pricing and price to win strategies. We just don't do that, right? So that's one thing where, yes, we have the reps fill that out, but what if there's some questions in there that helps us understand the bid a bit better? And sometimes clients aren't always the best at naming things, right? They might call something the pricing document, and then they'll ask a bunch of diversity and supplier questions in there as well. So we have to see everything, right? And including competitors. Do we know who our competitors are? We have a whole competitor team at my company. So we have what we call battle cards. So we know where to go to find information about what we can say to position ourselves a bit better, if known. And then executive buy-in, right? Like, not everything is going to be a good fit. Even if you don't have a formal bid no bid process in place, you can and should feel empowered to raise the red flag on something that seems iffy, fishy. If it's a low dollar value, I mean, if it's a low dollar value, they're asking for it under 10 days, they don't really have a backstory. Like, tell me where the good fit is. Like, tell me why I should spend time on your bid versus something that is a high ACV. We almost a slam dunk, because we don't want to take away our time and energy and resources to bigger bids that we're well positioned to win, just for something that is a shot in the dark, right? We're developing right now, and I don't have slides on this. I have notes on slides that I wanted to make about this. Is a proactive proposal. So that's something I want to, when we get to the chatting part, I want to talk about a bit more and see what other people are doing around that. But a proactive proposal could be something like, it's a no for us. We're not able to fill out all your documentation. We don't have the resources, but here's what we can do instead. And we can get away with that, guys, in the B2B world a lot more than federal bids, right? I've been on the other side of things in the federal space before, where if you're not like filling out every little checkbox and every little signature and all the forms, even if they're irrelevant, you'll get tossed, right, in the federal space, because it has to match up. It has to be one for one. But in the B2B space, if you get involved in the capture side of things, or you get with your business development team and you build out that stuff with them before an RFP drops, you can possibly prevent an RFP from even coming out. That's the dream scenario for a rep, certainly, is winning the business before they go to RFP. That happens sometimes, but also once we get it and it's not a good fit for us because of timing, money, whatever, then we can still give them this beautiful proactive proposal, and they have the choice to evaluate it or not. Like, and they may not. They may say, nope, sorry, it's in a portal. We have to have everyone do it this way, and then we make a decision on whether we move forward. So the proposal side of things, I think a kickoff call is absolutely crucial for true RFPs and RFIs. And I say true RFPs and RFIs because, again, my company specifically, we do tons of ITQs, and those generally do not require a kickoff call. Those are pretty standard answers, talking about our security. Where are our data centers? Like, what's our encryption rate? What can you do in the event of a disaster? All those types of things. So we typically don't have a kickoff call for that, but getting the right players to the table at the very beginning is crucial. And we usually do it within 24 hours, 48 at the most, because when you have only 10 days, it doesn't mean we don't get started on other things. We've been lucky enough at my company to hire a proposal coordinator recently, So she is in place to set up the folders, start triaging the bid, start getting a matrix together of who's going to be doing what. And we're using a combination of our RFP tool and OneDrive to keep track of these things. And then she sends a wrap-up email after the kickoff call. It's great. It's working really well. But capturing those notes and being able to go back to those, or being able to record the call if we are working on teams that are in multiple different time zones or parts of the world, right? So like not everyone can be at everything, right? So being able to record those kickoff calls for someone who's a key player to watch later is crucial. As I'm saying that, I just realized we don't usually record our kickoff calls, and we probably should. So if Lisa is watching, we should do that. And then content library. So, not all companies give you the dollars to spend to have an RFP 360, a Lupio, a Chorus, Quovidian, any of these bigger names tools. Ombud is one. For us, we do use Lupio. And some people have like a robust SharePoint. I mean, it just depends, right? I know my mentee uses a SharePoint site because they aren't able to get the spend yet for content library, but having something is crucial, right? You don't want to reinvent the wheel every time. You want to be able to have something that you can pull from that is not going to make you spin your wheels every single time. I mean, it's absolutely crucial. I spelled delegation wrong in that bullet point, and that's going to bother me forever. I clearly did not do a spell check, so that's fun. But delegating tasks and having that clear ownership is also paramount to success, right? We got one in yesterday. This is an absolute true story from late yesterday. We had a request in from a support team of ours. Then they opened a ticket with our production or our product team. And then somebody else, I mean, long story short, to say that it went to 3 different teams within our company. And thank God somebody called it out to tell us that, because the delegation was all over the place. We could have possibly, on the second to last day before quarter ends, had 3 different teams working on the same thing, with the other 2 pointing back to RFP saying, did you talk to Tara? So luckily we got that figured out, but it took 40 minutes of unraveling, which it was 40 minutes I honestly did not have yesterday, right? So make sure that you know who's doing what, and that the tasks are very clear. And if not, ask questions. I'm a huge fan of, like, I don't know, as far as communication, I'm getting into that on a later slide, but whatever channels you have in your company, use them, whether it's Teams, Slack, like whatever it is. I think just trying to make sure you're on the same page is really key. And then a process document. I can, if there's time, I can show you ours, like a sample chart we have. It's a little busy, but it keeps us on track as far as, like, in a perfect world with 10 days, who does what along the timeline, and what, in a typical bid. And then SME buy-in, building those relationships with your SMEs is such a great idea to do early on when you first start a company, right? Like, first start at a company, you can set up meetings proactively, introduce yourself, make sure that they know who you are, what you guys do, and why their piece of the puzzle is so important, right? For me, I always joke with SMEs that, like, they can give me anything they want as long as it's not in wingding font or something crazy, and we'll clean it up and make it pretty. And I don't want to ever, I know that SMEs have a lot more going on than just proposals. Like, that's all we do all day, the end, right? But it's often a hassle for them. It's a pain in the butt. So keeping that content library fresh, so that we're not going back to them for the same answers over and over. I mean, that's super frustrating. I mean, nothing's more frustrating than when you go to an SME for something and they're like, isn't that in Lupio, or your, insert proposal tool. And that gets to be frustrating, because in our mind, it's like, if it was there, we wouldn't ask you. But sometimes questions are asked in such a way that it's not clear that that's the answer. Like, we didn't know this also meant that. So when you get that intel, you can, our tool, for instance, allows us to put alerts or notes in that don't attach to the record. Ergo, if you're pulling that answer into something, it's not going to attach all your notes that Christopher said on 319, blah, blah, blah. Like, because we don't want to accidentally pull that into a bid. But I created when I first started here, a cheat sheet, right? Literally, and my team updates it daily. maybe not daily, but weekly, when we get new names, if somebody's left the company, somebody gets promoted into a new role, we're constantly, I mean, we updated it yesterday, literally. And I'm not afraid to share that with anyone in our company who also hears about it or wants to see it, just so that we understand who to go to in a pinch, especially like, again, like 4 o'clock on Friday, we have 2 questions left and we've got to get this out the door. Knowing where the bodies are buried is really helpful. And then I think I already talked about a process document. Yeah, I just did that. And then, some sort of way to track requests and metrics. Again, we use Salesforce. There's a lot of robust reporting that we are trying to start taking advantage of. Again, having hired 5 people in the last couple of weeks, some of the stuff that is on my wish list has fallen to the wayside, but hoping to ramp that up in the next couple of quarters. But and then like, how do you define what is a win for you? We were having this debate on my team recently. If we are invited to the RFI, we make it to the RFP, but we end up not ultimately winning, I still personally believe that's a win in some respects, right? But because you won enough to go to the next stage. That said, we also track all of our requests. So for a big company, they might come back to us 2, 3, 4, 10 times for additional questions, and we track those as a one-off email or a follow-up, right? So so at the end of the day, there might be 10 touch points, but we don't want to count that accidentally as 10 wins, right? So it's a matter of like digging into your data. If you have a Salesforce person or a CRM expert within your company, make friends with them, get on their calendar and see what they can help you accomplish. There's so much going on in Salesforce that I'll never be the expert on, and would love to lean on their expertise to dig into that stuff, especially being at an accounting company and finance company. They love numbers and metrics. So to be able to deliver that to senior leadership, not just is a good idea, but if you need more headcount, if you're saying you're overwhelmed, and you can come to them and say, literally, we did X amount of bids, it won this much money, this is why we need more headcount, right? And that's what I had to do for my team in order to fight for more. And then it should go without saying that a final review of what you're sending out is absolutely one of the most critical steps, right? We're all human beings. We all make mistakes. We've all been staring at the same, bid for 10 days or less. And we need, a colleague to spot check us to make sure that we're on track, that, whether it's an initial review of just like spelling, grammar, and responsiveness, if that's all you can get done, it's still better than nothing, right? In a perfect world, you'd want to be able to dig through and go through the technical answers and make sure we're on point. Sometimes a question asks 3 to 5 things. And so if you're just saying yes, but they said, please describe, and you didn't describe, that's not being responsive, right? So having someone in place at company to help do that. And if you're a team of 1, God love you, I've been there. I know how hard that is. But you have to get creative, right? Like you have to try and get leadership to allow you to at least borrow someone from another team, or maybe a contractor or something like that to help. So then let's go to, did I skip a slide? Nope. So nice to haves, right? It's always fun when you get an extended timeline. A lot of times that comes from, it's always good news when you submit questions to a vendor and they don't come back on the day that they said they would, right? Then you can kind of rest assured they're probably going to extend the deadline because they weren't expecting that many questions. They didn't have time to answer them. Fine. So when you get an extended timeline, great. I still sometimes like to try to work within the original deadline, not to be a masochist or anything, but just so that we try to get it off our plate if possible. If we're already near the finish line and then they extend it, who cares? Might as well submit it. But if we were a little wonky, or we missed a review because it was a rush, and then we get that extended timeline, then take that time, right? Like breathe, try and see if you can make anything a little clearer. Use those questions and answers once they come back to see if it bolsters anything in your bid. If there's something that you need to edit because you misunderstood the original meaning, take that time. And then I have already touched on this in the past slide, but those strong SME relationships, kill them with kindness, right? Like they're doing us huge favors by helping us out, and you don't want to make them feel put upon. So as much time as humanly possible that you can give them is awesome. And I always stress to my team too, always have a due date in your emails to SMEs, right? If you're emailing a team and there's no due date, you're probably going to get ignored, right? They're going to do the not it game. They're going to say, oh, I thought so-and-so was doing it. Well, I didn't know the timeline. So, I don't overuse the high importance button, but if I need the answer that day, I explain to them that, we just got it yesterday. We tried to answer it. We couldn't. Here you go. Another tip I like to do is if there's let's say 20 privacy questions, I know the answer to about 15 of them. I'm going to answer as best as I can. I'm going to send it to our person and say, hey, can you double check my answers, correct anything that is a mistake, and fill in the blanks. They're going to be a lot happier if you give it the old college try first, right? Like if you are really trying to get to the right answer instead of just dumping blank questions on them at all times. And if everything's a rush, nothing's a rush. So in the 10 days, it's a difficult balance. You cannot always get SMEs questions on day one, honestly, because that same day you might have 3 other bids due, right? So keeping multiple projects in the air at a time is crucial, right? So I say you got to work a little bit on each of them every day if you're assigned to multiple, right? So on a first day, you'd want to make sure you're getting that you're getting the legal, at least. We try to get legal involved early on if there's terms and conditions to accept or things like that. And getting all the bids set up the right way. Again, we have a coordinator now, so it's a lot easier. But in the past, we'd have to take that time to set things up. And then maybe on other bids that are a little bit further along in the process, within 2 to 3 days, you should try to get. I try to do a run through of the questions, and I don't necessarily answer the ones that I know. I might mark the ones that I don't know, right, and then start getting those out to the right people, and then go back the next day and start answering the ones you do know. So that way, they can start working on it. You give them a firm deadline of when it's due, and be very cognizant of the time zones, guys, right? Like for us, we work in so many different countries, and if it's due in Australia on the 15th, it means we pretty much have to be pencils down on the 13th, right? To allow for them to have a little bit of time to review the bids and, clean up anything that they might want to. And then the bid, no bid process, it's the power of no is nice to have, but there's going to be times where even if you do have a formal bid, no bid process in place, if it makes a certain score, and if it's not an 8 or above, I'm just like making up numbers here, it's not going to get bid on, right? There's going to still be outliers where it's like, well, we have this special relationship, and even though the ACV is very small, it could grow into this big thing because they're just testing us out. So you have to, every situation is different and fluid, but at least if you have some sort of formal template in place, they can understand that you actually do win more business when you say no sometimes, because it's not a good bet. I remember when I was being interviewed, I asked what their bid no bid process was, and the answer was, we're not in the business of saying no. And so, that sat with me for a while, because I'm just like, well, that seems very onerous and not like a great strategy. So, a full 3 years later, we're still talking about it and still trying to implement something. And of course, if it's not a good fit as far as we just don't do what they're asking, or we only do one of 2 things, and it's a single source award, then what are we doing, right? So you still have the power to raise the red flag, even if other people are saying that we got to go forward with it. Also nice to have is proposal templates, right? We have a very basic one at my company, and we have 2 people on our team diligently working to get that updated, to make it pretty, to have different templates too for different products. So it's not that you can't submit a bid without a proposal template, but you want to see consistency, right? Like if they come back to us year over year, or they have follow-ups or whatever, we don't want our templates and our responses to look wildly different from the last time, right? We want to show that branding. Talk to your marketing team, talk to your product marketing or whoever it is in your team that handles branding and stuff, because they will likely have your color schemes, like all the RGB colors and all that stuff, right? And styles. and formatting, I think in fonts, that's what I was trying to say, because it goes a long way. You will never, we're never going to win a bid based on, how pretty something is necessarily, but we might lose because of it, right? If we're saying this is our best foot forward and there's errors and mistakes and it looks wonky and the spacing sucks and you're cutting things off at the end of it just looks sloppy, right? And if you, it doesn't hurt, right? Those are free points to win in my mind. And then a wrap-up meeting. There's not always time, but if something went kind of weird and things were all over the place, or ownership wasn't clear. We had a bid recently where it felt like there was not just too many cooks in the kitchen, but it's like the ownership change. I feel like once it gets lobbed over the fence to the RFP team, the proposal team, that it's kind of ours to take to the end, right? To take to middle. So having people come in that don't know the process, like, I think it's on us to tell them what the process is versus like asking them, like, do you want me to make the meeting or do you want to make the meeting? No, we make the meeting. We send out the invites, we send out the updates, we keep everyone on track, and we're the project managers really. So being able to discuss that in a wrap-up meeting, in wrap-up meetings should happen the week after a bid goes out, because you get a month down the road, 2 months down the road, you forget about that nightmare from January. Like there's like almost nothing to talk about at that point. So if you're going to have them, and we do such a large volume, we did over 1,300 responses last year. That includes the one-off emails and sending out security documents and stuff. But if we're talking about true proposals and ITQs, it's probably around 700. And so there's obviously not time to do that on every single bid. That's a little nuts. In fact, but the ones that are big ones that are kind of messy, and definitely talk about the things that went well too. Like, what are the repeatable processes that we did in this one to get to the finish line, right? That we want to make sure we use going forward. Here's just a couple variables that could affect how you prioritize bids, right? A high ACV or dollar value with a known brand or label that we've been courting for a really long time. The relationship's great. Those often take precedence, honestly, especially with how much time is spent on a bid. Like if we only have 10 days and you want to knock it out of the park, then the ones that come in with less time, smaller ACV, and we don't seem like a good fit, like, we have to explain to the rep why we're not going to be able to necessarily give it the white glove treatment, right? And then for current clients too, a lot of times they're like, oh, you guys acquired XYZ company. Oh, you now do this. Okay, well, we're going to go out to bid again, even though you're a current client of, we're already doing business with you in this segment. We want to grow it to this, right? So oftentimes they get priority as well because we're already doing good work for them, and why not increase that value? It seems like a no-brainer to me. And then new solutions. So, maybe it is a low dollar value, but I mean, we just acquired a company in February. So we haven't even seen a bid yet come through for that product, but we're trying to already build up our library, build up those SME relationships so that when something drops, we're ready to go. And of course, a goal of our companies is to bring on as much business in that realm as possible this year. So you bet your butt that when that one comes out, we want to prioritize it so that we can start building our name in that space. So a couple of key takeaways. So this is a little floofy here. I'll give you that. At the end of the day, guys, we're not flying spaceships. Like no one's like curing cancer here. Like we're human beings dealing with other human beings. And when you put that kind of emotion into it and like assume the best intent, if you feel like someone's being ornery to you or asking the moon and the stars, consider we have no idea what people are walking through in this life. We don't, at my company right now, we just started going back into the office, and I don't know when I'll be going back, if at all, right? And every single person I hired in the last 6 weeks all lives in a time zone that is not mine, right? So I don't know when I'll get to meet these people in person. So we never know what's going on behind the scenes with other reps, with the people that we're dealing with the most, because we don't have the benefit of like seeing them at the coffee machine or whatever. And so just assume that don't take it personally. If someone's being short with you or whatever, like we're human beings dealing with other human beings who have other things going on outside of life. So, be patient, and the more consistent your team can be, I think the easier it is for we call our clients our internal reps. Like it's easier for them to know what to expect from our team. Like if it's all over the place and we're not responding to emails for 2 days, but then sometimes we're responding in 20 minutes, like try and have some sort of consistency around that so that they know what the SLA is and what your team can provide. And so communication and prioritization. Again, I just think asking the questions and making sure that you guys are on the same page is so important. Like if this is a pet peeve of mine, somebody asks for a rush, you reply to them immediately, and then you don't hear back from for a day, and you're like, I can't move forward without this other key information. So if it's truly a rush, then be engaged, and then ping them on Teams or whatever your internal channels are. And I say remain teachable. You don't know what you don't know, right? There is so many, our industry is growing, and the learning modules behind it are increasing all the time. Like what Bhaskar is doing with Baachu Scribble is just amazing. Like the free courses and the emails and the blogs and the webinars and the podcasts and stuff, dig into those guys. Like schedule time for yourself, each week, like an hour or whatever, to do some work in the field, right? You can certainly be on a webinar yourself. You can volunteer to speak on a APMP chapters monthly call or whatever, even if it's not your chapter. I strongly encourage people to get involved. There's so many things you learn that wouldn't even cross your mind by attending these things, by being a guest on them. And everybody has a story to tell. Everybody has knowledge to share, right? So you can write an article for free, right? You can publish it on LinkedIn or Medium or whatever. And there's so much learning that can be done. Getting certified, not just in APMP, but lots of places. SMA offers certification, certainly Shipley and others. And ask for help. Like I'm mentored. I have a mentee. I ask for help inside my organization and outside, right? So I have a contact, I have lots of contacts in APMP that I can bounce ideas off of, but also people in my company that aren't in my role, that aren't even in my vertical, right? So so that I can understand how things work within my own company if I'm getting frustrated with something, and just don't be stuck in your ways. In the 6 weeks that I've hired these new folks, everyone's come to me with different ideas. Some are a good fit for now, some are like maybe not, and some are like, that's awesome, but let's revisit it in 6 months. So like be open to being a sponge and learning from the people around you. All right, here we go. So this is where I kind of want to open it up to and then I have, this is my last slide actually, really quick. So this is like how to reach me, blah blah blah. I think I'm the only Tara Kowalke in the world, so I'm pretty easy to find. So I want to know what some of your hacks are for getting things done quicker, to any horror stories people want to share, pet peeves, all of that. So I don't know how to move off of this.
Thank you for this, for a practical kind of an overview of how you run things. I think we all have been living in this utopian world of 2-year procurement life cycle with a 30-member team and a capture manager, production manager, but in reality it's just one person and a 10-day kind of timeline, and you kind of nicely put together the journey. Let me launch the poll, I think, just to get a feel for it. I think,
yeah, please.
Let's do the poll. I think the poll just asks you 2 questions. One is, how many people are there in your team? So let's get a feel for it. And secondly, how many proposals do you have going at once? So I launched the poll, answer that. It's just 2 simple questions. In the meantime, there are a couple of questions, Tara, let me ask those things, and then the others have a few more. I will just go from there. Sure. Tara, the very first question is, then I'll just start with mine. Tara, 10-day, assume you have 10 days to close a bid. How do you plan this? In your mind, just talk us through, where do you start? How do you close it?
So let me share something. So this is, again, I'm prefacing this with it's a bit busy. Do you want me to end the poll, or no, there's people still doing the poll? Okay, so let me
let them do that. Yeah. Maybe another 5 seconds before we close it. don't worry, guys. This is anonymous, totally anonymous, and you know what? We just want to get a feel for it so that we could use the next 10 minutes to custimise the responses accordingly.
So this is, I mean, again, this is, you know, it's a bit busy, but we, you know, once something is released, we acknowledge receipt. I know that sounds silly, but you know, people want to feel heard. They want to know that their message was received. So like email them back and say, hey, we got it. We're working on it. We're going to let you know who's going to be helping, right? So again, if there's a bid no bid process in place, that should happen pretty early on or before it even comes to you. And then, you know, hosting kickoff calls, you know, determining if there's clarifying questions, all that kind of, some of this stuff happens in tandem. And then, you know, we want to have the outline created and filling in as many answers as we possibly can, utilizing SMEs, and then, you know, working to tailor the response later on in the bid. And then anything that's non-standard, you know, making sure that we have the right people in place so that it's not a last minute rush. And then finalizing, you know, around day 9 or so. And then we actually give our reps the bid to submit back to the end client. And so they actually have the final sign off on that. So yeah. Oh, excellent graphic. I will say, I'll do a plug here. So Dragonfly Editorial is a company we work with, women owned out of Ohio. They are huge APMP people as well. Sam Enslin is the CEO, and they help us with graphics and making things pretty, and they're helping us with our templates right now, and they're a great company. So,
yeah.
So I cannot take credit for that.
No,
maybe the text behind it, but how you get the cute things, I don't know. That's not me.
Thank you, Tara. That was useful. Again, it's important. I think once you know that your time scales is around a certain period, which is 10 days or 7 days, it's important for you to document that so that when you onboard somebody, they can just take it and run with it. Otherwise, as Tara mentioned early on, you might get stuck in one, and because you're a very short time scale, so it's important. That was very useful, Tara. Again, poll results have come. I think there is a nice balance. I think half, 1/3 of the people are one-person team, superstar team, and then you have a blend between 1 to 10 member. Looks like it's somewhere between 1 to 10 is the maximum, and then we have who are on the corporate side. And
although it says choice 4, I'm like, what's choice 4?
It's 11. It should be 11 plus, but for some reason it's just do that. And also regarding the number of proposals, I think at once was the question, and it's unbelievable, where many people do 20 proposals at once. I think at least, you know, I mean, like a small percentage is up to 11 to 20, and for most others, you do somewhere between 1 to 10. That was very useful. Thank you. So
that was for us, because we weren't able to, because I'm not able to enter in the poll because I'm a panelist, but we do between 20 and 35 at all times on our team. Like we have that many going at once. So that's interesting to see for sure. And with the timelines too, I always say work backwards, right? Like you find out what, you know, it's due in Japan on this date, so we have to have it on at this date, and then what happens like going backwards from it, right? So so that we're in a position to get it to where it needs to be.
Totally. Thank you, Tara. So what Tara kind of alluded to was, you know, what in addition to the 10-day timeline, it's also any time zones as well. So that comes with the zone baggage of, especially now with the clock change just this week in UK, that 1 hour lost could be a make or break for many of you because deadlines 1 hour before is where more bids get submitted. So let me start with some questions. Starting with Michael's question, any thoughts on tools to use okay, let me read the full question. I really feel a bid no bid tool will help, especially as it will encourage the capture managers to follow best practice. Any thoughts on tools to use, or would you be interested in using something like an Excel solution with a graduated rating scheme? How do you use your bid no bid tool, Tara?
So like I said, we're still developing it. There's a company called PATRI, PATRI, that literally has the corners of the marketplace on helping people get to the bid no bid. They have like a qualitative tool you can use that you can build into your process. So we're, if you want to put that in the chat, they're awesome. I know the CEO, Josh, is a big member of APMP as well, and we're talking with them right now. So we do have, I don't want to share it because it's not final, but we do have a matrix where you can score things, right? And so each different section gets a score. So I would honestly, I would just Google PATRI and maybe have a demo with them because they're awesome at it. And we're trying to see if we can get the dollars in place to do that. You can definitely still do one on your own, even if you don't have a formal system. And it doesn't mean that everything would need to go through that system, right? So we get a ton of repeat business, I will say. So clients that, and I'd be interested to see in the chat, can people tell me if anyone works on things that are not just RFPs and RFIs? Like, do other people do ITQs as well? So a large volume of what we do on my team is current clients that give us annual vendor surveys, right? So they are things that we have to tell them year over year that we're still as secure as we said we were last time. Sometimes that looks like just updating the same one from last year. Sometimes it's a brand new portal. They want us to fill it out from scratch, and there's no ACV attached to it. So we're not winning any money, but we still want to do a great job and let them know. Like for instance, our one of the differentiators for our company is that we have twice yearly SOC reports, right? And so they're very expensive to do. They're a long undertaking. And even Google, for instance, only does it once a year. So it's good for us to be able to say that we can do that twice a year. So yeah, I had some other questions too. If the chat goes silent, or do you have any? Oh, Adrian, you do tons of, yeah. I remember we talked about this. Yeah, you have 3 people solely focused on that. That's awesome. We kind of divvy up those responsibilities, and we have, now that I have a larger team, we do kind of silo things into, like, this person does ITQs only, and there's other people on the team that do both RFPs and ITQs, and then others that only do RFPs. So we're trying to figure out like where the sweet spot is for that, for sure. Yeah, so okay. Claire says they do all the repeat and new supplier forms. Okay. Yep. For landfill sites and PDQs. Yep. And then the tenders. So that's the one thing that we differ on, is we don't do the new supplier forms, like the onboarding forms. We do have a team that we can pass that off to, usually billing, where they want like the banking information, our EIN number, W-9s. But again, in a pinch, last night at 11:30, I was filling out one where I was uploading, some things that billing would typically do. That way, when they woke up this morning, they only had like 5 or 6 questions left versus 16, right? Just because it was due today. So yeah, that's interesting to know. And then, do other people use proposal software tools right now? Again, we use Loopio. We used to use RFP 360. I have experience with Quotidian and of course Breeze and a bunch of others. Do you guys do any of those, or do you have a homegrown solution for those of you who are on smaller teams?
I'll just leave the attendees to put it on the chat, Tara. But from my experience, I think product-based companies like yours, that sort of automation tools helps because you do a lot more proposals than most. But service-based organizations tend to struggle with those. It actually wastes more time than actually, because you don't do, you might do like 30 bids a year in service-based proposals, whereas whereas in product-based you do 30 a week or something. That's how we do it. But I wouldn't. It's not for everybody. But as you rightly said, product doing the same thing, repeatable. Maybe it adds value. But we have Eric here as well as an attendee. Obviously, Eric might know, he has seen 40 years of people doing bids. But that's good. So I think I'll wait for another 2 minutes before I open up the Scribble Quest. 3 questions from the stock. Whoever answers, as you know, will get points.
Responses. Yeah, we got the responses in the chat too. Shelf, Adrian, I've never heard of that. And then Claire, I'm wondering which one you trialed that was dreadful. Yeah, that's interesting. And yeah, and some I know, like Ombud, we had a demo with them, and they're a great company, but they're geared towards federal and proposals, right? Where they had a model, and maybe it's changed, so forgive me if anyone uses it that's on the call, but at the time it was like you could, you get charged per proposal if you go over 20. And so I'm like, over 20, oh my god, we do hundreds, right? So for us, our model looks like we have unlimited proposals, and we get charged per user versus RFP 360, which I know they merged with another company recently. So their model has changed, but at the time we had unlimited users, but only a set amount of proposals we could do. So it's just a balance of what's right for your company. Yeah. Okay, Michelle.
We are Mitch as well, I'm sure, from your chapter, Tara.
Yeah.
Mitch is sharing his experiences, but coming from a grant side, I think Mitch is a legend, and Mitch is sharing that they spend a lot of time with solution, and looks like Monday.com is where they went. And again, that's
I don't know them.
There's a lot of I think the market is kind of merging now. So most people, even they don't call themselves as proposal automation anymore because it devalues them. So they try to call them as sales enablement tools now. And when you position yourself as a sales enablement, there are a lot more tools that they could go for. Again, good luck to everybody who was considering or not considering, etc. There's a checklist within Baachu Scribble. You can go and find about proposal automation. We have audited 5-6 tools. The pros and cons is also there. So let me go back. Please do have your thoughts coming. Few things about it. But let me open up the Scribble quest, and then we'll come back if there is any questions to it. Okay, ready? So 3 questions starting now. As you know, whoever tries it correct, even if you didn't get the first one, also get a point. So don't worry whether you didn't come the first, but even if you answer it correctly, you are still getting it. So in the very first slide, Tara mentioned typical scenarios. Obviously, she had a warm and a hot mess, but what was the other 2 options? The first 2 options. Tara, you can't answer, by the way.
Right, I'm keeping quiet. Kelsey got one.
Exactly. Good, Kelsey. Well done, you. So Kelsey got that. The second one is, there was a beautiful slide in the nice to have part where Tara talks about strong SME relationship. And while talking about that, Tara used a beautiful word, which is how to engage with SMEs, which is kill them with dash. What was that? I should have left the whole statement, but I made it. Nice, Tamara, nice. Because I think that's important, because you never know what the other person is going through on the day, going through the minute. And the only thing you could do is just to stay kind. That's a beautiful point. Yeah, they were very fast because they all are legends in Scribble Quest. Claire, you will get used to it. If you attend more, you'll be used to it. So the third question was, Tara mentioned that if you kind of miss out remove all the responses like the emails and quotes and stuff, what's the number of proposals that they do in a year? Oh, in a year. Ooh.
More than 20. That's technically correct.
Right. So okay, let me the bigger answer was 1,300. But when you filter it off, let's remove the emails and the quotes and stuff. She said another number, which is less than 1,000, by the way, but more than 20, as Michelle pointed out, totally. Close? Anybody wants to try?
Claire got pretty close. That's 750.
Exactly. Claire, we'll give it to you, Claire. It's 700. So there were, again, the last one from this is, the very first slide talked about scenarios. Then it was must-haves. Then it was nice-have. What was the other slide after nice-have?
Oh man, I don't even remember. Now I have to look.
The title for after nice-have, as she talked about, learn, share. There was a nice title that she attached to that. Anybody?
They should win 2 prizes if they get this.
Exactly, because you made it so practical, because normally people come with 40 slides, so it's very easy, but you made it so practical. It was quite hard. So anyway, I think the first this was a bonus question. Tara, do you want to answer it?
Yes, it was variables affecting prioritization.
Correct. Variables affecting prioritization. That's it. So again, that's it, because this is, we all live in this world. Most of the talks or even the APMP syllabus is dwells on federal government. I find it challenging week on week training people, where the reality is 10 days, whereas the APMP talks about 2 years. And then the federal government, capture managers, production managers, proposal designers, where in real world, it's just one person trying to do everything. So this session is just a starting point of bringing more commercial experts who do bring the best of the best, but within the shortest time as well. So Tara was one. Tara, thank you for joining. And I think if next week we will have Angie Wolf. Angie will be talking about a guide how to hire a consultant. That's it. I think we get to different flavors, and every week 3 p.m. Thursday is what we are doing. So the webinar will be available on demand, as I mentioned, for 2 days from registration. You can access it with the same link. The recording and the slides and the related resources will be emailed out tomorrow. Any questions? You have Tara's details. Drop her a line. As Tara mentioned, she'll be in Dallas. I'll be in Dallas. Looking forward to meet some of you there face to face. Otherwise, I'll see you next week with Angie Wolf.
Thank you all. I really appreciate it.
Thank you all. Thanks, Tara.
Take care. Bye.
Please do share your feedback to us, and that'll be great. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for joining.
Bye-bye.